Exploration is one of those unique aspects of video games that no other medium can fully replicate. Getting lost in a digital landscape where I get to explore at my own pace and decide where to go next has always been one of my favorite parts of gaming. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about my own motivations for exploring, trying to figure out what drives me to see what's around the next corner when there's no explicit directions given by the game itself. Is it pure curiosity, or is there an expectation that there will be some meaningful content I can interact with once I arrive at my destination? It's sort of a complicated topic that I definitely don't have any solid answers for, but it's a fun thought experiment that's pushed me to look at games in a different way. It's been over a month since Mario Kart World released, and the new free roam mode has had a pretty mixed reception so far. Common critiques include the world feeling empty, there not being enough interesting objectives or rewards, and a general feeling of boredom and disinterest. And honestly, I think there's a lot of truth in those complaints. Compared to most other open worlds, there's hardly any reason to do anything in Mario Kart World. The lack of tracking for how many P-switches and Peach coins you've gotten makes collecting them feel somewhat pointless, especially with the useless stickers you get as a reward. And yet somehow I'm still spending a whole lot of time exploring despite not feeling very invested in the actual content placed around the map. This unusual approach to an open world is what sparked my interest in the wider topic of exploration. If Mario Kart World's free roam is unable to provide the necessary motivation for most players to get invested in seeing every corner of the world, why do I still enjoy wandering around its massive map? Many of us have suggested that they add a tracking feature for the P-switches and Peach coins to give you a reason to engage with the world. But they worked on this game for over 8 years, so I don't think they just accidentally forgot to add that feature or didn't consider it at all. It seems more like a deliberate design choice to stop players from engaging with the open world in the way that so many other open worlds operate, which often become a checklist of objectives that leads to jumping from one to another without much thought. By removing the ability to track the content in the world and having the map screen be purposefully vague with its visuals, it forces the player into a more simple form of exploration where you're only ever motivated by the next thing you unexpectedly find in your path. But just because that might have been the intent, it doesn't mean that this was a perfect choice. The reality is that I do think I would feel more motivated to explore if I had a list of P-switches to find, even if it would change the way exploration feels. And I think they could have found a middle ground by adding a total number over each area while still not giving you the exact location for where each one is. I think this attempt at an open world is flawed and doesn't fully resonate in the ways that it could have. But removing most of the checklist elements from the open world changes the way I interact with it on a fundamental level, which has led to me thinking about video game exploration in a whole new light. The first game that I remember spending large amounts of time exploring in was Mini Ninjas on the Wii. These huge levels and the lack of a time limit meant I would spend hours running around in them. I usually didn't even care what the main objective was, and would actively go off the main path to explore the parts of the level that you're not really supposed to spend much time in. Except for this Ghost Graveyard level. I sped through that one as fast as I possibly could. There's a variety of things to find while exploring these levels. There are Jizu statues that act as the main hidden collectible, ingredients that can lead to new potion types, and caged up animals that net you some XP when you free them. But the crown jewel of secrets were the shrines that unlocked new spells. These can actually be pretty difficult to find, as they're tucked far away in the corners of the level that you didn't even know existed. Finding one of these was like the ultimate reward, and it felt incredible to stumble upon something that was this important and useful while exploring. It may sound crazy, but for me, Mini Ninjas has the perfect mix of exploration and rewards that makes spending time in each level an immersive and engaging experience. To use a more recognizable example, Breath of the Wild does something similar for me, just on a much bigger scale. Between the shrines, towers, Koroks, quests, and towns, there's plenty of things to find while exploring Hyrule. Seeing a tower off in the distance and heading in that direction only to get sidetracked by 10 other things on your way is peak gaming. But what's strange about these two examples for me is that I never set out with the intention of finding these things. They're amazing discoveries that have given me some great memories, but they aren't the only reason I feel the desire to explore these worlds. A big part of this discussion is intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. More intrinsically motivated players tend to explore because they found it fun and rewarding all by itself, while more extrinsically motivated players are often searching for an external reward the game offers once you make it far enough or complete a certain task. It's the difference between setting your own personal goals while playing versus completing the goals the game sets for you. Neither form of motivation is inherently better or more valuable than the other, and it's rarely a black and white thing. For me, I bounce back and forth between feeling more intrinsically and extrinsically motivated. When playing Breath of the Wild, sometimes I'll activate a shrine but not enter it yet because I'm enjoying the atmosphere of exploring so much that that's all I want to keep doing. But in a game like Metroid Prime, if I were to make it to a room that has no form of upgrade or collectible, whether I can currently obtain it or not, it would feel like a waste of my time and frustrate me. Now of course a Metroid game is structured very differently than something like Breath of the Wild, as the upgrades and rewards are much more of a focus. I'm conditioned to expect a tangible sense of progress as I explore Planet Zebes, where the rewards found across Hyrule are mostly optional. I need the various suit to get to the next area, but getting that extra heart container is simply a nice bonus that lets me take on tougher enemies without as much risk. So I approach different games in different ways, because of both the game's design itself and my own personal reasons for exploring. Monster Hunter is one of my favorite gaming franchises of all time, and yet I've spent almost no time exploring these maps even when they have a more open world structure. That's not a criticism, as they're excellent environments that aren't really designed to be explored, as the main focus is taking down a Lagaya crew so you can craft that cool new armor set back in the village. Sometimes I simply want a clearly defined goal to work towards, which ends up getting me immersed in the world in a totally unique way. But there are also times when the amount of rewards and objectives can feel overwhelming and push me away from the game. Tears of the Kingdom has way more content than Breath of the Wild did, and yet I've spent much less time trying to find it all. The huge amount of stuff to do and things to find should give me more than enough extrinsic motivation to keep playing, and I think for a lot of people it did. But without that intrinsic desire to see the map for the first time, the game wasn't able to hold my attention quite as strongly the second time around. It's similar to how I constantly keep starting new survival worlds when playing Minecraft, as nothing beats that first time exploring an unknown landscape. Once I become too familiar with the environment around me, I eventually lose interest. But that's obviously not how everyone plays this game, as other people might get a strong sense of satisfaction from building an elaborate world that they pour a ton of hours into over time. And then there are games like Sea of Thieves, where the core hook of living as a pirate is so strong that I'll gladly spend time delivering cargo just so I can have an excuse to sail around the ocean and take in the sights. I've put over 50 hours into this game and I've barely made any significant progress, which doesn't even bother me since exploring is my only goal. These two types of motivation I've been talking about aren't entirely separate things, as the truly legendary games are able to balance both of them at the same time in effective ways. Life sims like Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, and Fantasy Life are full of this kind of mixing of internal and external motivators. By offering a high amount of customization and personal expression, the player is often motivated by their own intrinsic goals for creating the island, town, or farm of their dreams. But the game itself is still the one setting the requirements needed to actually achieve those things. I think that's what makes these games so addicting for me, as I'm able to do what I want while still having clear missions that I have to complete along the way. But traditional exploration is never my favorite parts of these types of games, as I'm more focused on building and customizing. Of course, not every game has to be open-ended and full of exploration, as there's still a ton of value and importance in more linear experiences too. It's just much trickier to pull off the balance of motivation in huge open worlds that give the player a high level of freedom while also trying to offer the perfect amount of content to engage with as rewards for exploring. It's why even the best open worlds still have reused elements spread across the map, as it's nearly impossible to fill every inch of the map with unique interactions. The drawback of giving the player the freedom to go anywhere in a huge world is that it becomes a lot harder for the developers to decide where to put everything, which often leads to reused content being scattered across the map. But in games like Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild, the reused aspects don't bother me much as they aren't my primary motivator. It's the atmosphere of exploring and discovery itself that really draws me in. Personally speaking, the content and rewards can't be the only appeal as they aren't enough to keep me engaged on their own. There also has to be a core desire to explore built from my own curiosity. But without enough rewards to keep things interesting, I'll eventually run out of that desire to see everything. That's where this all gets a lot harder to talk about and describe, as the best games have that balance of motivation styles that makes it difficult to pin down what aspects resonate the most. And this is all just in relation to how I play games, and I'm just one person. How is a game developer supposed to design a game focused on exploration that satisfies all types of players? The unfortunate answer is that you can't. Making one game that everyone enjoys is impossible. We all look for different things and are motivated in different ways. What works for me could be incredibly boring and ineffective for someone else, and vice versa. And that brings us back to Mario Kart World. While it definitely seems like most people find free roam lacking and want them to add new features in a future update, I have seen a few others say that a tracking system would take the fun out of it for them. And a lot of players are spending time in free roam just learning the game's movement and mechanics without having to be in a proper race. The open world provides a blank canvas for experimentation and fun that's valuable even without tons of content to interact with. The developers likely never intended for free roam to be what many people expected from it, which would explain its lack of content and structure when compared to other open worlds. So I see it as less of a failure and more of a different direction that not everyone will love. And I think the biggest crowd of players that aren't sharing their opinions quite as loudly are the kids who are currently growing up with this game. When I was younger, I didn't need a reason to explore in every game I could get my hands on. Everything was so fresh and new that I didn't care about missions or objectives. In fact, usually those just got in the way of me following this boat to see where it's going. I had a strong personal desire to see everything a digital world had to offer, whether there was a reward at the end or not. As an adult, I've started expecting a lot more from the games I play. I now want there to be satisfying progression systems, a strong narrative to keep me invested, or fun unlockables that give me something to work towards. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Some days I look at games with an analytical lens, trying to understand what did or didn't work for me to try and determine the quality of the experience as a whole when compared to others in a similar genre. But on other days I'm just jet skiing around the marine resort and go vacation without a single thought in my head. Both ways of engaging with games can be a lot of fun, and I think the important part is switching between multiple different ways of playing to keep things from getting stale. Sometimes I'm able to tap into that childhood magic of exploring worlds for no other reason than because I feel like it, and sometimes I need more solid motivation provided by the game itself to push me to explore beyond a surface level. Like I said at the beginning, I don't really have any answers for what drives me to explore in video games, but I enjoyed writing and thinking about this topic, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on why certain types of exploration do or don't work for you. Honestly, I think the secret ingredient for all of this might be a game's soundtrack, as if you put a chill remix of Lamode from Mario Odyssey on in the background, I'll turn off the critical part of my brain and just start vibing while driving in circles.